1923's final debunks a Jack Dutton Yellowstone fan theory, and I'm grateful. I'm glad 1923 Season 2's finale debunked a theory about the fate of Jack Dutton, Darren Man. 1923's epic ending closed out Taylor Sheridan's Prohibition-era Yellowstone prequel with an action-packed and tragic 2-hour finale. Spencer Dutton, Brandon Sklinner, made his long-awaited return to Montana to save the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch and exact his revenge on the villainous Thomas Whitfield, Timothy Dalton. What Spencer and the Duttons didn't know until the chaos was over was what happened to Jack. In 1923 Season 2's penultimate episode, The Mountain Teeth of Monsters, Jack Dutton was killed by Thomas Whitfield's men. Jack foolishly abandoned his post guarding his aunt Cara Dutton, Helen Mirren, and his pregnant wife, Elizabeth Stratton, Michelle Randolph. Jack hoped to join his uncle Jacob Dutton, Harrison Ford, and protect Spencer upon his arrival by train to Livingston, Montana. But Jack was shot dead after he made the mistake of trusting Livestock Commission hires who were secretly working for Whitfield. After Jack Dutton was killed in 1923's penultimate episode, his body was dragged away into the woods. It seemed Jack would be taken to the newly discovered lawless area between Wyoming and Montana that Yellowstone dubbed the train station. 1923 Season 2 revealed Thomas Whitfield originated the train station as a way to dispose of his enemies. Naturally, there was fear that Whitfield's goons would make Jack the first Dutton to be the victim of the train station. Thankfully, Jack wasn't taken to the train station after all. 1923 Season 2's finale revealed Cara sent Yellowstone cowboys on the trail to Livingston to find Jack, and Whitfield's men had abandoned Jack's body in the woods. While this was a callous move, sending Jack to the train station would have been even worse. At least Jack's body was brought back to the Yellowstone so he could be properly buried in the Duttons' family graveyard, along with Spencer's deceased wife, Alexandra Dutton, Julia Schlepfer. Jack Dutton's death in 1923's penultimate episode was a genuine surprise because of his untapped potential that sadly will never be realized. Jack was a capable cowboy and a willing recipient of his uncle Jacob and Aunt Cara's wisdom, but he was also naive, impulsive, and immature for his age. Jack's love story with Elizabeth felt like puppy love, with Elizabeth grasping the very real and adult realities of being a wife and future parent much faster than Jack. Instead, Jack's loyalties were to his cowboy lifestyle first, his wife second. Obviously, Jack had a lot of growing up to do, and 1923's fans wanted to see him mature alongside Elizabeth and their child. Unfortunately, this is the Yellowstone saga, and more Dutton men died violently than lived to ripe old age like Spencer and Jacob. Jack was gunned down like his father, John Dutton, James Badge Dale, and so many Duttons that will follow. Jack was not meant to be the heroic Dutton he imagined himself to be, and he's a part of Dutton's tragic lineage of family members who died for the Yellowstone. One naturally feels deeply for Elizabeth Strafford's profound loss when she buries Jack Dutton at the end of 1923 Season 2's finale. Elizabeth became pregnant for the second time, and she went through with her intentions to leave the brutal violence of Montana and return to Boston. Elizabeth hoped Jack would choose her and their child over the Yellowstone. Even if Jack lived, Elizabeth rightfully sensed Jack would never abandon his family, even for the new one he was making with Elizabeth. Jack Dutton's legacy lives on in his child with Elizabeth, and their story will potentially continue in 1944, the next Taylor Sheridan Yellowstone prequel. 1944 could see Jack and Elizabeth's son or daughter, who will be about 20 years old, come to Montana to join the Duttons' Yellowstone legacy. The senseless tragedy of Jack Dutton's death in 1923 would have been magnified if Jack had been sent to the train station, And I'm grateful Jack didn't become the second victim of Yellowstone's most dreaded final destination. For months, Yellowstone fans have clung to a theory like it was a sacred family brand. That Jack Dutton, the rugged, impulsive, all-heart nephew of Jacob Dutton in 1923, was the true forefather of John Dutton IA, Kevin Costner's character in Yellowstone. The theory had roots, passion, and just enough vagueness from the Yellowstone timeline to make it believable. After all, Jack embodied so many of the qualities we see in John: grit, loyalty, a stubborn streak a mile long, and that ever-present Dutton instinct to protect the land above all else. But then the 1923 final rolled around, and Taylor Sheridan, in true Sheridan fashion, pulled the rug out from under us with a blend of quiet character moments and sweeping narrative clarity. The message was clear. Jack Dutton is not John Dutton IE's grandfather. And honestly, I'm grateful. Let's unpack what happened and why it works. The theory: Jack was the Dutton link. When 1923 first introduced Jack, played with youthful fire by Darren Mann, fans immediately connected the dots. He was brave, he was headstrong, and he was deeply in love with Elizabeth, an equally spirited young woman willing to forge a life of hardship and cattle drives. Viewers watched their love blossom, their tragedies unfold, and their bond deepen. Surely these two were meant to carry the Dutton name forward. The theory made sense in a surface-level, romantic sort of way. Jack survives shootouts and rustlers. He marries Elizabeth. They're young and full of life. If anyone's going to build the bridge between the 1923 Duttons and the modern-day ranch, it's Jack. Right. The finale dropkick. Wrong. In 1923's finale, subtle yet decisive clues made it clear that Jack and Elizabeth's lineage would not, in fact, continue. The big gut punch came when Elizabeth tearfully told Jack she had lost the baby, a miscarriage following the stress and trauma of the ongoing range war. And then came the haunting silence between them. Jack devastated. Elizabeth hollowed out. The tension that followed was not one of "we'll try again," but one of emotional rupture. A future that had been so vivid and full of potential was now a dim flicker in a foggy room. The final scenes didn't shout the truth. They whispered it. But for those of us who've been paying attention, it was a clear, heartbreaking conclusion. Jack and Elizabeth don't carry the line forward. The real legacy: Spencer and Alexandra. So who does? Enter Spencer Dutton. The globe-trotting younger brother of John Sr., Spencer Dutton was the wild card of the family, the haunted war veteran turned big game hunter, wandering through Africa and into Alexandra's arms. While Jack represented the rooted, cowboy life of Montana, Spencer was the adventurer, the one trying to outrun his trauma. But by the finale, Spencer's journey turns deeply personal. He's not just fighting for love anymore. He's fighting to get home, to take up the mantle, to honor his brother, his father, and the family name. And then there's Alexandra, British nobility turned rebel queen of the frontier. The chemistry between her and Spencer is electric, but what really makes them special is their sense of purpose. Together, they're building something new. And it's Spencer and Alexandra who, by all clues and timeline math, are the likely ancestors of John Dutton IA. When Elizabeth miscarried, it was more than a personal loss. It was a narrative turn. Sheridan gently closed the book on Jack's chapter as a patriarch and handed the quill to Spencer.